Hey, welcome back. I guess we're starting the second mission. What time is it? Just gonna talk about church stuff today. Because I went to a new church. I mean, guess what? I didn't like it. I don't know. One thing, kind of a side note I was thinking about was a lot of churches, they're kind of constantly talking about, whenever I go, how the America is becoming less religious. And it's true. It's definitely true. But obviously as a Christian, like, it's kind of scary. It's not scary to me, but it's scary to people in the church that, like, people are less Christian. But I was looking for a church here, and there's like 100 churches in this area. It's like the people in church are so sad about, like, churches closing, but I'm like, oh, it's probably too many anyway. Do we really need these many churches? It's good, like, to do a lot of charity and stuff. I guess I would say, like, it's better for churches to be smaller. You don't want them, like, all churches all, like, people grouped together, and then you have, like, a church with 2,000 people or whatever. It's better to be smaller so that, like, you can have a pastor and he can, like, reach everybody in the church and talk to everybody and be like, hi, how's your wife? Is she sick? Like, does she need help? I don't know. Like, I don't know what church to go to. There's like 1,000 churches here, and there's only like 1,000 people. There's nobody up here. Why are there so many churches? Okay, so if somebody dies, then they die for real. If they die in the game, they die for real. That's the rules. Oop. Whoops. What do you want me to do? Uh-oh. Oh, why'd I do that? I wanted to use Lynn and you didn't let me. Oh. Okay, so the church. So I went to a church. It was like a bigger church. It was more modern. Like, they had a coffee bar in the lobby. And there's a lot more people there. There's a couple hundred people at the service at least. Probably more. But this church is like a church planting church. So, like, the pastor wasn't there. He was in Albany. So he preached in Albany, and then they recorded him and they beamed him to Utica, where I went. And I didn't really like that. I'm like, let Albany have their own pastor. And then, I don't know, it's weird. That's a little tiny thing. I could get past that, but I didn't like it. But guess what they talked about? I mean, I don't remember exactly what he talked about, but he mentioned gay people again. Third church I went to in a row. I don't care. Why are you guys talking about this so much? They always find a way to squeeze in, like, oh, we don't like gay people. I'm like, and I don't know. This church I thought was going to be a little bit more progressive, because it was, like, bigger and there was, like, kids there. Like, like teenagers, like hip. I don't know. I thought they would be better about that stuff. Does he have a sword? Okay. Beep. I like how they just whacks him on the head with the sword. Oh, he's in the woods. Okay. So he was talking about how he read in the news that in Europe they're banning conversion therapy, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. And the pastor was kind of like, yeah, conversion therapy can be bad, but in the article it said they're banning prayer, like you're not allowed to pray to convert people. And he was like, they're gonna ban prayer, and like they're coming for us. I mean, he seemed like kind of a smart guy because he was going through the arguments, like he was having an argument. He does kind of like what I do here. He's like, he was presenting the other side and like talking it through. And he was saying, like, he's had gay people come to him and be like, I just don't agree with like your interpretation of those verses. And I'm like, oh, that's me. I don't agree with that interpretation. There's a tapping upstairs. I'm still gonna talk louder. They can't hear me. That's your interpretation, man. Can I play already? Come on, let me go. So I'm like, that's me, that's my interpretation. And then he would say something like, well, you don't have a problem with my interpretation, you have a problem with the Bible, because that's what it says. And he's like, there are some things in the Bible that we can, have a debate about and talk about, and there's some interpretation with some things, but and this was the part I didn't like. It was really arrogant of him, I felt like, for him to say this. He said, there are some things that are debatable, but there are some things that are so simple that even a 7-year-old can understand. And he's referencing one verse in the New Testament. And I know if I say like, oh, it's just one verse in the New Testament, he could say like, it's like the whole foundation of man and woman, Adam and Eve, old stuff. Like, there's a lot of verses about how man is supposed to be with a woman, whatever. God, there's somebody right up there. And I just feel weird talking about gay stuff right now. Can you hear them? Oh, I don't like it. What are they doing? I talked to my therapist about that this week. I mentioned how I was still doing this, but it's a little bit hard because sometimes I could hear the people upstairs. Sorry. And I don't know, she's being kind of dismissive. I know what she's trying to do is be dismissive of the thoughts and not like dismissive of me. She's trying to like be an example of like, okay, this is how you have to act. You have to just dismiss the thoughts. But I was like, oh, sorry. It's stupid. It's so much. I know how to play. Don't tell me how to play. I was like, oh yeah, it's hard for me to talk loud in here. And she was like, well, can you hear the people upstairs? I was like, no. And so she's like, well, they probably can't hear you. And I was like, yeah, I've kind of thought about that. But like, I can't be 100% sure that they can't hear me. I have a pretty good idea that they can't. But it's still hard. Like when I hear them, I'm aware of another person. So I'm like, whenever I'm aware of another person, I just get quiet and I don't want them to hear me, and I don't want to talk. So that's hard. But I'm okay. It's better than my bedroom, because in my bedroom there's a guy on the other side of the wall that can hear me, so he could definitely hear me, I think. But yeah, first world problems. I know what I'm doing. Let's go, come on. Hey, just pop him on the head. Is that how you use a sword? Okay. I don't know. I kind of wanted to talk more about the church stuff, but I mean, I'm looking for a new church, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And I don't know if it exists. I don't know. That's the only problem I really have with the church, is like, they're so close-minded to another person's way of life, I guess. I don't understand. I guess I kind of was thinking about, like, I should talk to my parents about it and try to understand how they could be so, because they're the same, kind of. I mean, they're like good. They don't talk about it. But if they did talk about it, they'd be like, well, gay people are bad. And all the other issues with Christianity, I feel like I could be fine with. Like, okay, abortion's kind of bad, whatever. Or, I don't know what other social issues they talk about, but the gay thing bothers me, how they could be so arrogant about their interpretation of millions of people in the world are saying that they love somebody, and like, you want to take it away. I don't understand why you want to take it away from them. That seems like the cruelest thing you could ever do to somebody, is be like, I'm allowed to be in love, but you're not. I'm allowed to get married and have kids, but you're not allowed to experience that. And it's based off kind of a flimsy interpretation of just like, Paul said it once, and just kind of the framework of the Old Testament's like, okay, man and woman, but why aren't we allowed to recontextualize that and be like, well, if people love each other, then how can that be wrong? Obviously, just in the olden times, it just wasn't a thing, so they never thought about it. I liked one explanation I heard somebody say once. It was on Harmontown podcast. I know this is like an oversimplification, it's probably not even true, but it made me laugh. In the Old Testament times, the most important thing was procreating, because like, the more people you had, the more soldiers and the more power you had to protect your land. So like people were constantly trying to kill you, and that's why God said, be fruitful and multiply. It's really important. If you read the Old Testament, people are constantly trying to have 1 million kids. That's why. So like if you're in Harmontown, he's like, if you walk in on 2 guys being together, you're like, hey Greg, what are you doing? Like, we gotta be making kids right now. You can't be doing that stuff. Like, stop wasting your time. We need more kids. Like, you can't do that. So that was their context of like Old Testament times. It didn't seem like they really thought about love that much. Like, okay, God loves us and I love God, but it's not really the most important thing to love your wife. I don't know. So, what's the verse? I always reference it, but like, I'm just gonna say it. New Testament verse about gay stuff. There are 7 texts often cited by Christians to condemn homosexuality. What's the New Testament one? Paul's letter to the Romans. Romans 1:26. Is that the one? Yeah, I mean, even in this website, it's saying like you can interpret these verses to be like, well, Paul isn't talking about 2 people in love. He's talking about like lustful, like stuff. Like he's talking about stuff that I could do, like with a girl, like just caring about physical things too much. And there's no love there. It's not love. It's like bad stuff. You can interpret it that way. And we're keeping millions of people from enjoying the best thing in the world, love, right? Based on one verse. One interpretation of one verse. I don't get it. How you could be so arrogant about it and be like, oh, even a 7-year-old could understand it. Where's Romans 1:26? That is why God abandoned them to their shameful desires. Shameful desires. Okay, first of all, is it shameful to love? No, it can't be, right? Even the woman turned against the natural way to have sex and instead indulged in their sex with each other, and the men, instead of having normal sexual relations with women, burned with lust for each other. Men did shameful. Even reading this, I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's very clear here that gay people shouldn't be together. But even this is like, even in the English translations, because sometimes people will say like, oh, in the original Greek translation, it doesn't say man and man or whatever. But I'm like, this, men did shameful things with other men, and as a result of the sin, they suffered within themselves. That's the verse? I guess I hadn't read it in a while, but like, no way. Is it shameful? Is it shameful to love somebody? No, so then he's not talking about that. So this is probably the one part that people will point to is, and the men, instead of having normal sexual relations with women, burned with lust for each other. Okay. Burned with lust for each other. Lust and love are different. If you love somebody, Come on. I don't know. I'm trying not to be as arrogant as that guy was. Like, it's so simple. But I'm trying to say, like, it is open to interpretation. It's not that simple. I just want a pastor to say that. That's it. That's all you have to say. I just don't want you to be so set like you know exactly what God is trying to say. You don't. Nobody does. There are some things that are clear. A couple things. And it's mostly the things that Jesus said, because Jesus came back and was like, you guys are overcomplicating things. Oh, I gotta end. So he simplified it. But Paul didn't simplify it. That's not simple to me. That's open for interpretation. If you love somebody, does it count as lust or sinful desire? I don't know. So I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.